is located. So we'd like to do a quick land acknowledgement. So New York University acknowledges that it is located in ancestral Lenape homelands, and it recognizes the longstanding significance of these lands for Lenape Nation, past and present. We are also conscious that New York City has the largest urban Native population in the United States. We believe that historical awareness of Indigenous exclusion and erasure is critically important and are committed to working to overcome their effects in our own educational institutions. Thank you. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is April Thompson. I work in the Office of Graduate Marketing and Admission Consulting, and we are so happy, like I said, to bring this program to you today. We're going to cover what does it mean to apply to an engineering or mathematics or technology related graduate program. So hopefully we'll get a lot of your questions answered. I have some questions prepared for our panelists, but like I said, you're welcome to put your own questions in the Q&A box, and we'll try our best to get to those. And let's go ahead and get started. So I'd like to invite my two panelists to join us and turn on their camera and introduce themselves. So I'm going to ask them both to share their name, their pronouns, their position in their school or college, and something unique about NYU that draws students to enroll. So Jennifer, you're first on my screen, so please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jen Darlington. I work for the Graduate School of Arts and Science for Graduate Enrollment Services. Let's see, there's so many unique things about NYU. I would say, I think one of the most useful aspects of it and really what draws people is New York City itself and what that provides, especially, at the graduate level. I feel students are very attuned to their career prospects, and having the opportunity for internships, co-op experiences, and recruiting right on campus for full-time jobs really is amazing, and it gives you such an edge competitively against other schools. And we're happy that you joined us.
Thanks, Jen. And next, Carrie.
April. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Bowling, and I'm a Senior Assistant Director on the Marketing and Recruitment side, which means I work in admissions for long. That long title basically means I'm here to help you. I work on the graduate side here at the Tandon School of Engineering. My pronouns are she, her. And then something unique about New York. Well, what I would say about NYU, especially within our technology programs and our engineering programs, is we're really on the cusp of cutting edge technology that's happening in the city. And so not only are you positioned, as Jennifer was saying, with being in a great location, but you can really take advantage of this location because of the research and things that are happening here, and really just be on the edge of new and exciting things. So I think that's a big draw for a lot of students as well. Excited.
Agreed. Agreed. But on being excited and both of your points, like there's so many things that make NYU a very unique place to study, and I definitely think the location and the access to so many things that are going on in the city and all over the world. I saw in the chat we have some folks joining from NYU Abu Dhabi, so welcome.
April, can I add one thing that Carrie made me think of, because it might not come up otherwise, and I want to make sure students are aware of it. The Leslie E-Lab that we have, it's an amazing opportunity where a lot of times, there's the tech students who have the ability, and sometimes the liberal arts students who have ideas, but not necessarily the ability to carry them out on the tech side. It's this great opportunity that we have here at NYU where people can bring their strengths and partner, because we are so big and we cover such a diversity of topics and fields of study that you really have this great on-campus opportunity to partner with people. I believe that's where Etsy got started. And when I did the last tour, I learned that at the E-Lab. So that's something to keep in mind too. And you can research while you're looking at NYU, the Leslie E-Lab, and see what opportunities, especially for people in technology, that provides.
Thanks for adding that, Jen. The Leslie E-Lab is a very, very cool place. There's a lot of really smart, really cool people in there. Well, wonderful. So I have some questions that I've prepared for both of you that'll talk a little bit about the tips and tricks of the application process, what people can expect. So my first question is just about graduate school in general. How do people decide that they need graduate school? Like, what would you say to someone who's sort of on the fence about, investing so much time and money and effort for a graduate degree? What do you recommend for those folks who are on the cusp? Who should they speak to? What should they think about? What should they consider?
Yeah, I can go first. So I always tell students, I actually myself recently graduated from NYU in a different school. And I have the same thought process. I was like, do I need a master's degree? Why am I doing this? Who should I talk to? And what I found to be really helpful is to figure out what your goals are. And I think that is maybe not the initial thought a lot of people have, but you can, if you do a little soul searching, figure out, where do I want to be? Is there a particular job that I want to do? Do I want to work in management? What skills do I need for that? And then thinking sort of backwards from there. How do I then get to this ultimate goal that I have professionally or academically, whatever that might be? If you're thinking about a PhD, whatever you're thinking about in regards to your ultimate goals. And then if you're thinking about that, how these programs can be of benefit to you, thinking about the return you're going to get on that investment. What type of experience are you going to get? How is that going to have an advantage in the professional environment or in an academic environment for you? I found it very helpful, not only talking to admission staff like myself and Jennifer and also April, just to find out the logistics about the application process and comparing that between other institutions, other programs. You may, for example, not want to do a GRE test, and some people require it and some do. Taking all of that into account, but also really looking into what the programs are offering you in regards of the study and the curriculum. So are you going to be studying things that you actually care about? Master's and graduate programs are very, very specified, and they will get you to be an expert in a very specific thing. So it's important that it's a program that you really are interested in and connects to your goals. In addition to that, once you have all of that sort of information rounded up, I find that also thinking about the possibility of talking to people within the departments can be helpful. For example, if you're maybe deciding between a program that's in the engineering school or GSAS, and you're not really sure how those programs could fit into your goals, that's a great opportunity to reach out to some admission staff. We can maybe get you connected with some faculty in the department. I know I did that when I was deciding between NYU programs, and it was excellent because I was able to speak to them about my end goals. They understand the industry and they gave me some great advice.
Very good advice. Thanks. Jen, do you have anything to add? And maybe
that was a very thorough, excellent answer. I completely agree with all of that. I think a really key point is know your job, like kind of know what your career path is that you currently think you're interested in, and seeing what the requirements are for that. But even more so, once you have that as your idea, it's so overwhelming. I'm interested in engineering. Okay, well, there's so many different schools and so many different programs. Really figuring out what's the right fit for you. That's especially more so at the graduate level than undergrad. Every place has their specializations and what they focus on more. So you really want to look into that. All departments will have a list of their faculty with their research areas. You'll be able, for most schools, I would say, will have the courses that they've offered. You can look at the syllabuses, really look at that school. Yes, you want the school to pick you, but you also need to pick the school. You need to make sure they're the right fit for you as well. So really make sure that you're investigating it, so that, okay, this school and this program really align with what my interests are, what my career goals are.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that everyone on this call has in common is that they're interested in engineering or science or technology, right? And especially in those fields, having a graduate degree, having a master's degree, sometimes a terminal degree, having a PhD is vital to your success in those fields, right? One thing that I really love about graduate school in general is that you can pivot, right? So maybe you studied one thing in undergrad, but then you found your true passion, and then you can come back and really specialize in a certain area for grad school. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I used to work in the computer science department at the graduate school. And I feel like in technology more than anything is where we've had so many people who went for a completely different degree when they were undergrad. Now maybe it's 10 years later, sometimes more, but on their own, they developed these technology skills and that's become their passion, and they're making complete career changes. And that's really where you see it in the technology, I feel, these programs more than anything else. And we encourage that and we welcome it.
Wonderful. So the next question, I wanted to give both of you an opportunity to sort of talk about your schools and sort of the general application process, right? So if you were talking to someone who was not familiar with Tandon, who was not familiar with GSAS, and you needed to make them aware of how to apply to a graduate program in your school, what sort of tips would you give them? Are there specific requirements for your schools and your programs, especially when it comes to engineering or technology related programs?
Sure, I can go first for that one. So for the Graduate School of Arts and Science, it can get a little tricky because we're a huge graduate school. We have over 50 departments, and it's very different admissions at the graduate level for us. At undergrad, there's a college has an admissions office, and they get all the applications and they make all the decisions. For us at the graduate school, my office helps with the online application itself, but then the completed applications go to the faculty and the individual departments, because we feel at the graduate level, those are the people best equipped to make the admissions decision. Because of that, we really leave it up to the departments to decide what they want. So they set their own application deadlines, they decide if they want the GRE or not, if they want writing samples, things like that. So it really does vary. So you have to make sure when you're applying that you know exactly what your program requires. I'll meet students all the time who will get the email like, you didn't submit your GRE scores. And they're like, but my friend told me they weren't required. And I'm like, well, your friend is applying to creative writing. So yes, your friend doesn't need to submit GRE scores. You're applying to computer science, you do. So you have to make sure you really look at what the specifics are for your program. In general, for the graduate school, everyone has to submit the online application, the application fee, an official transcript, which you upload directly to your application. You have an academic statement of purpose. There's an optional personal history statement. We have 3 letters of recommendation. If you're an international student whose primary language of instruction for your undergraduate degree or any degree that you will or have earned wasn't English, then you'll need either TOEFL or IELTS as well. And a resume or a CV. So that's the application itself. Some programs are going to require the GRE, some are not. So you just have to check that. My recommendations are always follow the directions. So submit your application by the deadline. If the GRE is required, make sure you take it early enough so the results are there in time. Because at some point, and you never know when that point's going to be, the admissions committee is going to say, okay, give me all the complete applications. And all the incomplete applications are going to go in this pile over here. And you never want to get put in that pile over there, because there's going to be a lot fewer yeses by the time they look at those applications. So get it in on time. If they say the statement of purpose should be 2 pages, double spaced, submit 2 pages, double spaced. Some people might not care, but some might, and you never know the dynamics of that committee. So you want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward and following all the rules. That's kind of like it in a nutshell, I would say.
Excellent. And I'm also going to ask both of you, if you could, while the other person is talking, if you wouldn't mind putting a link to maybe your application guide page in the chat, so that way folks can learn a little bit more about the process. We're going to talk a little bit more about, GPA and some of those other things, but I just wanted you to both give a brief overview, but just for the folks who are here today, if they want to follow up later, if you could put that in the chat, that would be great.
Oh, it says the chat's disabled.
We'll fix it. We'll make sure you can put it.
That's a great idea.
Thanks. Carrie?
So at Tandon, we're slightly different, some similarities. So what I would say is that the structure in which your application is reviewed is the same, and the essence of we help with your application, making sure that all of your questions are answered, everything is completed, and then getting that to the departments for review. Your applications across all of our programs, we have are almost 40 programs within our school, so across 11 different academic departments. So we do have a little bit smaller of a school, but it is still a larger institution. But we have a little bit more unified requirements, I would say, across the board. What I tell students is we have sort of core requirements that all of the programs are going to require. And then from there may be additional requirements, and I'll talk about those in a second. So some of those core requirements are your standard things, the online application. Yes, there is an application fee. It is $90. However, because you've attended today's session, we will send an email out with an application fee waiver code that if you have not completed your application yet, you can use that to waive the $90, which is great. And then of course, when you upload your application, you are going to be required to provide an academic history of all of your transcripts and degrees that you have completed. So that will be something that is required. In addition to that, for our master's programs this year, we are actually completely waiving the GRE at the master's level. So that is not required this year, which is a new development. So if you are thinking about planning to apply for this fall, this would be a great opportunity. We do re-review each summer that requirement with our faculty and department, depending on how the applicant pool that came in from the previous year worked. So this is a great opportunity to jump in and not have to have a GRE requirement. There may be some PhD programs that do require it though, so do be sure to check our website if you're interested in a PhD. Outside of that, we do have your sort of standard resume, statement of purpose, and some recommendation letters that are required. And then again, there are some particular programs that may have course prerequisite requirements. I know Jennifer was mentioning that sometimes we get a lot of students that come from maybe not technical backgrounds or other backgrounds, or maybe you're jumping from one technical background to a different one. Most of the time, if you're coming from a STEM background, it'll be an easy transition for you. But if you're not coming from a STEM background, there may be a couple of programs that you want to make sure you're looking on the website that you have the courses that are required for that. Again, not all courses do have prerequisite classes required, but it is something to check out, as well as our programs that have additional requirements. For example, our media and design program does require a portfolio because design is really important. So just making sure that you are checking the website for your particular department to see if there's any additional requirements, but those are the core requirements. As for deadlines, we do have two different intakes, fall and spring. If you're interested in spring, the deadline is November 1st. And then for fall, we do have, for our PhDs and our masters, there is only one intake for PhDs. So you can only apply for fall. Masters is the only one that does spring and fall intake. But for the fall, there is for PhDs one deadline, which is December 1st. And then for our master's students, we have two options. We have what we call an early deadline. It's not a binding contract if you decide to apply by the early deadline, which is also December 1st. But we do highly recommend it because you are going to be a part of that first pool of applicants that faculty are reviewing. And it's a great opportunity to get your decision in faster in the springtime when decisions start rolling out. You're going to get your decision most likely before people that are applying after that December 1st deadline. But if you're not able to get your materials together by December 1st, you have until February 15th, which is our final deadline for our master's level programs for the fall intake. So just be sure you're marking those in your calendars and getting everything together. Outside of that, again, there's no GRE for the masters, but you do we do require some form of English proficiency testing if you are coming from outside of the United States or studying at an institution outside of the United States. So do be sure to prepare for that. We take a wide variety of exams, the TOEFL and IELTS, which are pretty standard, but we also take the PTE, the Cambridge, and now the Duolingo examination, as we've found that's more accessible for students. So just be sure to check the websites for the minimum requirements that we have on that. And that's it.
That's it. Done. Perfect. No, I thought that was a really great synopsis, both of you, of just sort of like what to think about when you're applying, like the process A to Z. These are some of the components you'll have to think of. Of course, for your specific program, you're going to need to do some research and look up what those requirements are going to be for the for you. But I thought that was very a very succinct summary of the application process. So now I want to dive a little deeper and talk about some of the specific application components, because one of the questions that I get asked most frequently, and I think we had some in the Q&A, was about, what parts of the application are most important, or does my GPA really matter? Or, can you talk a little bit about maybe not necessarily how things are weighted in the application process, but what would you just say to someone who is like, I want to do a grad program, but maybe my undergraduate GPA isn't the best? Can you talk a little bit about how GPA is considered specifically? I think that's one of the most common questions.
I'll go first this time. We can go back and forth, Jennifer. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, so for us, this is a big concern for students. Obviously, we're applying to, highly competitive institution with highly competitive programs. And, your academics are going to be an important consideration in that. I don't want to, have you think that that's not. Sounds like we have some people that are not muted, but sorry about that. But anyway, so that is important, but it is not everything. And what I tell students is that we wouldn't be asking for all of these other materials in your application if they didn't serve a purpose for us in the review process. I think a lot of times students will think, oh, it's only my GPA or my test scores that are getting looked at and everything else is a wash. Like, I'm not even going to really try on those things. All that matters is my GPA. And that is far from the truth. Believe me, it would make our jobs a lot easier if we did not have to process all these additional materials to get them added to your application. But they are an important element of your application. And what we tell students is we have a holistic approach to the application process. So even though we will be looking at your GPA and looking at the courses that you may have taken in your undergrad that relate to the courses that you're going to be taking in your grad program, to get an idea if you're going to be academically successful. And we do have some GPA requirements at Tandon. So you do need to have a minimum of a 3.0 out of the US 4.0 system for eligibility. We still review your file if you are a little under that. And occasionally students do get admitted with that because we are looking at the rest of your application as well. So if you're a person, as April mentioned, that maybe you're not super confident in your GPA from your undergrad, focus on these other aspects of your application. So making sure that you're having good recommendations, making sure that your personal statement is great, as well as your resume, talking or highlighting about things that you've done in your undergrad, or maybe since you've graduated, if you've been out in the workforce. And that really gives the the advisor who's reviewing your profile a more well-rounded perspective of if you're going to be successful in this program. So that's something I tell students. Also, as I mentioned, the GRE is not required for the master's students for your application, but it is optional. So if maybe you have taken the GRE already and you got excellent scores and you think, this might boost my profile, I would recommend you can submit those GRE scores at that point. But I will caution you that if you do submit scores and you're not fully in love with them, I'd probably say not to submit them. Not submitting them is not going to hurt your profile, but submitting sort of mediocre or not great scores can indeed hurt your profile. So I would only opt into using the GRE as a tool to help you if you really feel confident in the scores that you have. But again, the GPA is important, but it's not everything.
Good to know. If you did well in the GRE, which was not me, but if you did well in the GRE and it's optional, submit it. But if you did not, maybe don't submit it. Cool. Thanks, Carrie. Jen?
Yeah, I agree with Carrie. I would add two things specific to GSAS. So in terms of the GRE for GSAS, we have three options that departments can choose from. It's either required, not required, or optional. So if it's optional and you did well, by all means, go ahead and submit it. If it's not required, then don't bother to submit it because they're not going to look at it. So especially if you're paying money to have it sent, I don't want you to waste your money. The committee will not look at it. It will not even be accessible to them to see it. So that's specific to GSAS when it's not required. The other GSAS thing, we have an option on our application for additional information. So sometimes, you know, maybe you had a bad semester, you had some extenuating personal circumstances, or maybe you started your studies in one program that wasn't a good fit and you switched, you know, your parents told you you should be a business major, but you had no desire for it and you didn't do well, whatever it might be. If you feel there's a compelling story to it, you don't want to write a novel, but you could certainly in the additional information section of our application, write something up and include it if you think that would explain to the committee the discrepancy in your grades. But don't let it stop you. You know, so many times people are so worried that that's going to be the thing that keeps them out. And if you have a department who puts a GPA, a suggested GPA, some of ours do that. Then honestly, if you're very far from that, I would probably say it's not a great fit for you. But for ones that don't, that really means that they're looking at everything. And maybe your GPA is not great, but your letters of recommendation knocked it out of the park, and it can compensate for things. So, you know, look at the big picture of it all.
Very good advice, right? Because you're, you know, it's nerve-wracking, right? You're trying to put your application together. But sometimes, right, like, yes, the application process, there's a committee looking at is the student a good fit for the program, but the student also has to figure out if the program's a good fit for them. So really good advice there. One thing I think that keeps coming up with, especially in like science and technology related programs of study, is the idea of work experience versus internships versus research experience. Is there a hierarchy? Like, is there one that's better in terms of, you know, research versus work or versus internships? And what would you say to someone who maybe has one and not the other? Like, should they not apply? Or could that still be relevant, or could they still be a fit?
Yeah, I mean, it really does vary, you know, and it varies. We have applicants who are accepted who are coming straight out of undergrad. We have people who are finishing up a master's degree. We have people who've been in the field for years. Sometimes we have someone who already has a PhD and now they're getting another one. It really can vary. For PhD, especially, my top tip would be research. You know, especially if you're still a student, get as much research experience as you can. Talk to your faculty, talk to your, you know, director of undergraduate or graduate studies, the chair of your department. Are there independent studies you could do? Is there a lab you could work in? Is there any kind of research project you could do? Faculty, especially for the PhD applications, look for that. If you don't have it, it doesn't mean you're not going to be accepted, but it's certainly going to help your application if you could get that experience and then get letters of recommendation from faculty who supervised you in that role and who saw your research ability. And then obviously, you know, work experience, any of that, anything that you're adding to your application is going to help you. But, you know, it's not the end of the world if you don't have that experience, but try to then find something else in your application that compensates. There's no one perfect applicant who has, you know, everything, you know, it's all the holistic big picture of different parts.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Carrie, or we can?
Yeah, no, I do want to add a couple of things to that. Sorry, I was just like trying to unclick my mute and was not doing it. Apologies for that. But yeah, so what I tell students is I think a lot of times when you're in the process of applying to programs, you can sort of get in your head and think, what do I need to be the perfect applicant? And surely there's a rubric that I just am not aware of, that if I just meet all of the things on this hidden rubric, I will be the perfect candidate and admitted. And unfortunately, that's just not how the application process works at the graduate level. And so what I tell students is that we are looking for, you know, a great pool of applicants that are going to be a great class of students that help not only enhancing themselves, but also help enhance the education of those around them within the program and the department. So because of that, we aren't looking for a cookie cutter version of the same person over and over and over again. We are looking for a student that is, you know, well-rounded and whatever that means for them. And so when students ask me, you know, should I have internships? Should I have, you know, years of experience? Should I have research experience? It's really going to depend on what you would like to do. So for example, if you're applying to a PhD program, you know, having research already is going to be something that's fairly vital to the, you know, your application process, because you're going to be doing research for 4, 5, 6 years. But, you know, if you're somebody who is a little bit more practical and you want to go straight into the workforce and get your master's, having some internship experience or having some work experience could be really helpful and beneficial for you as well. But also these things aren't necessarily required. As Jennifer was mentioning, we also have students that are coming from various backgrounds. We may have students that have come directly from their undergrad, direct into a grad, or even direct into a PhD from their undergrad. We also have people who have worked in the field for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 plus years before coming to apply. So it's really just going to vary. You know, I'll restate this because I know Jennifer said it too, but anything that is something that's not an application requirement, because these things are technically not requirements, that you have done, whether that be projects, papers, internships, whatever they may be, those are always great things to add to your profile, to add an additional bit to sort of boost it, to talk about how you can be successful, and let the faculty that's reviewing your file know that. So what I would say is that one doesn't really outweigh another. If you're thinking like, oh, I don't really have, you know, internship experience, all I have is all of this research. Well, that's not going to hurt you that you have all of this research. That's great. There may be people that don't have research at all. So, you know, it's something that I say they're equal in their own way in this holistic approach.
Wonderful. I think that that's something that's really important to keep in mind, that like it is a holistic approach. It's not just one thing. And if there is something very specific that a department is looking for, whether it be a certain GPA or a certain test score or a certain amount of research experience or whatever that may be, they're going to be upfront about that. They're going to either post that on the side, or they're gonna let you know that that's what they want. So very, very good tips. We have a lot of questions in the chat, and so I'm gonna try to synthesize some of them and work them into the existing questions that I have. One thing that I'm not necessarily seeing in the chat, but I want to touch on quickly before we move to some of the other things that people are asking about, is about personal statements. Because I think another thing that I hear from folks who are applying to engineering and science and technology programs is, does the personal statement really count? Or is someone really reading that like, I have these amazing test scores, like what does it matter of, you know, my personal statement? So maybe just briefly, if you both could touch on that, or one of you, whoever feels moved to, could just talk about the personal statement. What is it, and does it really count?
I would say that it depends on the faculty member reviewing the file. And sometimes it really counts, and sometimes it doesn't count as much. But unfortunately, you are not privy to how that faculty member is reviewing it. So take it as it's as important as any other aspect of your application. So there's a couple of things I tell students to consider. It's sort of a twofold process. One, when you're in the application, when the application asks you for your personal statement, most likely there will be a prompt question. Make sure that you're actually answering the prompt that you're being asked. Or if there's not a prompt and it's just having you upload a letter of some sort, make sure that you are catering that letter to the program that you're applying to. I think that sometimes an easy mistake that a lot of students make with these is they don't really care about them that much. They're like, I'm applying to a tech program. Does anyone really look at this? And they miss things that are pretty obvious while applying to several schools. You know, like for example, saying, oh, I'm so excited to possibly attend George Washington University, and you're applying to NYU. That is not going to look great when a faculty member does that. Even if the faculty member wasn't going to weigh it that heavily, if they see that in the opening line, they're going to be like, oh, that's not great. So making sure that you are, taking the time to actually focus on this particular thing. It's also a great time. I also tell students that this is one of the only times in your application you actually can make yourself look like a human being to the faculty members. You aren't a number. You aren't just the experiences you've had. And this is a great opportunity for you to talk about those things. It's not an opportunity for you to just put your resume in paragraph form. It's an opportunity for you to talk about your past, your present, and your future, and how the program and the research being done there, or the faculty members that are working within your program, can help you reach those goals. And so I do think, yes, it is important, and make sure that you are putting in that effort into this when you're applying.
Yeah, for the graduate school, we've two. So there's the academic statement of purpose, which 100% they're looking at, and they're looking at very seriously. And just like Carrie said, make sure you're looking and answering the questions they ask. We have our standard kind of question for it, but many departments tweak it and have very specific things that they ask. So you want to make sure you're answering it, and that your time, part of it is, how does this fit with NYU? What does NYU and GSAS offer that aligns with that? So it's a very serious statement. The personal history statement that we have is optional. So again, it's anything that's optional. Not submitting it is not going to hurt your application. It's not a negative. If you think it could add something to your application, by all means you can, but don't worry if you feel like this isn't my strength and I don't think it's really going to add to it. You don't have to do it, and it's not going to hurt you. For US citizens and permanent residents, we do have a Dean's Award that is decided based on the personal history statement. So when you're in the application, it'll give you a prompt if you want to apply for that award. And if you do, it'll tell you what the question is and how to answer it. But again, optional. And if you say, I don't want to apply for this award, but I'd still like to submit a personal history statement, you can. And just in case I don't get to put it in anywhere else before I forget, for anything that you're writing, so your personal history statements, your academic statement of purpose, I always recommend reading it out loud, because your ear will catch mistakes that your eyes don't. You know what you meant to say. So, and sometimes you're reading it so many times, you don't catch the errors, you don't catch redundancy of phrasing and things like that, but your ear will hear it. So I always recommend doing that, and then have someone that you trust look over it, see what they think, and triple check it before you hit submit. Because every year, as Carrie said, I'm so excited to apply to Columbia, like, and student applicants will realize it after and ask to change it. And at least for the graduate school, once an application is submitted, we won't change anything. So if it's the statement for the wrong school, or it was your first draft and you're on draft 10 and that's what you meant to submit, unfortunately, we're not going to change it. So just really make sure you're proofing it very carefully.
Yes. Read 8 times before you upload. Absolutely. You touched on something that I do want to come back to, and I'm going to try to be a very skilled moderator here in our last 15 minutes and work in just a couple of questions. So one of the things that I think is a common thread that I'm seeing about questions is requirements for international students when it comes to WES evaluations, 3-year undergraduate programs, do they count, that sort of thing. I know that both of those pieces of information are on your websites, and some of them could potentially vary by program, but generally, could you address those two things about being an international student or applying when you went to a university that is not in the US? What are some special considerations that folks might need to keep in mind?
Sure. So for the Graduate School of Arts and Science, our application is the same. We have a huge international population, more than 40% of the students. So in terms of your transcript, so you're going to upload your official transcripts. You need to include a certified translation if it's not in English. And then you do not need to submit the WES. We don't accept it, so don't bother submitting it. We do our own transcripts evaluations. We'll determine if it's the equivalent of a US bachelor's degree, and we do the equivalent GPA. In terms of how many years of study, it does vary. From the UK, we accept a 3-year honors degree. For India, we require 4 years of study. So, which for most people in the technology, getting a bachelor's of technology or a bachelor's of engineering, it is a 4-year degree in India and some other countries as well. If you have a 3-year, we require 1 additional year of studies, which full-time studies, which could be done another year of undergraduate studies, 1 year of a master's program. You don't need to earn the master's, just 1 year of studies, or 1-year diploma program. What I would say, and I'll put the email in the chat, just email the admissions office and we'll let you know if you're eligible or not, because it can sometimes be confusing. It's not a hard and fast, for countries it is, but it does vary what the rules are based on the country that you're receiving your degree from, not the country you're from, but where you're receiving your degree.
Yeah, so there's some differences and some similarities on the NYU Tandon side. So similarly, we have the same application for domestic or international students. So there's no real difference there. When you're uploading transcripts, we do allow you to upload copies of official transcripts at the time of application. So if that's something that you think would be easier for you, so say you only have one version of official transcripts or something like that, you're applying to multiple schools, we will take those for review purposes only. Just keep in mind that official transcripts will be required if you do intend to come to Tandon, and they'll be required prior to you starting your coursework. And we do take that quite seriously. We do actually cross-reference what you submitted to us with the official ones once we get them. So some students do opt in just to send the officials at the time of application to make their lives easier later on when they, are coming in the fall. Like Jennifer said, we do not accept external evaluations. So through any service, whether that be WES or another or WES service, we do not take those. We do our own internal evaluations as well to determine what your conversion is from your GPA into a US GPA, as well as determining your degree equivalencies. So we do get this question a lot about 3-year degrees. There is the thing with credentials is it's an art, not a science. So there are differences between lots of different countries. So for example, in the UK and in Europe across the Bologna system, a 3-year degree is something that is acceptable. We do talk about this on our website, so be sure to go and look at the website or email us if you have specific questions. But for example, a 3-year degree in Australia does not qualify, but a 4-year honors degree in Australia does. I think a lot of students in India get this question quite a bit because you have a wide variety of degrees that you can get. We do not accept 3-year degrees from India. What we do accept though is 4-year degrees or a 3-year degree plus a master's degree. There is a slight discrepancy between what Jennifer said and what happens at Tandon. We don't just base it on years of study. You would need to complete that master's degree in order for it to be equivalent to a bachelor's degree in our eyes in India. So a lot of students, what they would do is maybe a 3-year degree plus a 1-year master's degree program and actually complete that degree fully. And then we would consider that equivalent to a US bachelor's degree. Some caveats to consider in India, because the Indian education system is quite vast and varied and does change frequently, is that if you have a diploma of engineering, as well as basically an accelerated engineering bachelor's degree in India. So it took you 3 years to do, but it's technically a 4-year degree because you're combining it with the diploma of engineering. We will take that in most cases, but you would need to show proof of the diploma of engineering. A lot of students get confused by that because technically it is something that was from high school, but we do need to require that if we're going to combine it with your 3 years of study at the undergraduate level. All that is to say is that India is quite complicated. So if you have something that is in some context 3 years of length of study, be sure that you're reaching out to the admissions office about those requirements. We cannot guarantee that you're going to be found admissible when you submit your transcripts. We do not review those transcripts prior to your application. So you would need to submit that application for review, and we would then determine your eligibility after the full application is complete. So do keep that in mind. So if you're kind of unsure if you're eligible and you've looked at the website, you've talked to us, you're still not sure, why not use the application fee waiver so you're not putting yourself at risk there, to make sure that you are indeed eligible. But what I would say is most of the time a 3-year degree in India is not eligible.
Very important information, very, there's some differences in the policies. So I'm gonna ask Tandon to also put the application information in the chat and links in the chat. I know people are very anxious because they have questions, and we're going to try to get to those, but I think we have time for 2 more. And so one, I think that I keep seeing quite a bit is about the differences between the 2 computer science programs. So we do have 2 different computer science departments at NYU. One is in the Tandon School of Engineering, the other is in the Graduate School of Arts and Science. Could you please lift the curtain and tell us what is the difference between the 2 programs? Or I know it might be hard to say, well, we're different than them because, or could you just give a brief synopsis of both programs so we can kind of compare them both side by side?
Jennifer, do you care to go first? Sorry, I just wanted to pop some of those things into the chat if you didn't mind.
I was hoping you were going to go first on this one because it's a great question. So it's interesting. I would say to really look, and I'm going to defer to Carrie because this is her field, maybe more specifically, but the only reason I could give some answer of what I used to say when I worked in the computer science department at Grad, at the Graduate School of Arts and Science, look at the faculty and look at the courses that they're offering. You're going to get similar degrees. I don't honestly find it substantially different, other than it varies on what field you're interested in. I know, and this was a couple of years ago, so it might have changed, but whenever I had someone come who was really into cybersecurity, I would always say, look at Tandon. That was a really strength for them, and it wasn't for GSAS at the time. So it's things like that, depending on what you're specifically interested in doing, artificial intelligence, and I want to work with Jan LeCun. Okay, try to apply to GSAS. You really want to see what your good fit is based on what your interest is. But I would defer to Tandon on their answer.
Yeah, no, I think that, so this happens quite a lot actually across NYU because the graduate schools are decentralized. We do have programs that overlap. As I was mentioning at the beginning of all of this, I had that with my area of study where I had programs that essentially seemed the same to me in 2 different departments or 2 different schools at NYU. And yes, I will, exactly what Jennifer said is looking at the curriculum for each one of those programs is going to be essential. You can see on our websites the courses that you're going to take, looking at also the differences in the types of concentrations or focuses you can have within those departments is also going to be important. And then also looking at what research is being done in the departments as well. That's going to tell you the sort of academic, sort of main differences between these programs. You can also speak with faculty in the departments too to get more nuanced information, I would say. But also, I think it's important to think about, one is in the School of Arts and Sciences and one is in the engineering school. So as Jennifer was mentioning, if your ultimate end goal is to do something within, a certain field, thinking about how our courses are going to be influenced by the fact that you're in the engineering school versus the arts and sciences school is important. So for example, we get a lot of students that come and we're interested in data science as well as computer science. And at the Tandon side of things, we don't technically have a data science program fully. What we have is our computer science program with a data science concentration. So, but I know that Courant has a full data science program. So, and that is because it's coming from an arts and sciences math background that is very math focused versus, a practical application through computer science. So I think it's important to make sure that you're looking at all of those different nuances. It's hard to articulate exactly like this is the main difference because frankly, they are two computer science programs. So there is a, overlap and a lot of things that are being done. But I think thinking about, how the program is structured, coming from the nuance of engineering versus arts and sciences, as well as, the type of research being done in those departments is going to be able to help you articulate which is sort of the best fit for you.
Very good
advice. Can I add one
advice.
thing on that?
Sure. Yeah.
Certainly applicants can email faculty. We don't discourage students from doing it, but I just want to acknowledge, don't be discouraged if you don't hear back. It really does vary departments, if they respond or not at the graduate school. Typically the bigger programs like computer science, math, data science get such a huge influx of emails. They just don't have the bandwidth to be responding to all the prospective applicants and students. So don't take it personal. Don't think that's a reflection on your chances of getting in. It's just, they just don't have the time because it's so big and they're getting so many emails.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly say as well, that also does happen at Tandon. So what we recommend is to reach out to the admission staff first and see if we can coordinate something. And then also we do offer virtual events that faculty do attend where you'll have an option to sit face-to-face with them in a virtual environment. And that's a great opportunity to save those types of questions for them. Sorry, go ahead, April.
No, I think that was a really good point to add in there for both of you, because I feel like it's intimidating to email faculty and it can be really disheartening when you don't get an answer. And one of the things that I was even telling my own daughter in her application process was like, those faculty, they're teaching classes right now. So, if you really like someone's work and their research and, I'm sure that they appreciate that. And it's usually a bandwidth issue. So totally. I acknowledge that we did not get to all of the questions in the chat. So what we're going to try to do is, don't feel any pressure, Carrie or Jen. We're going to put our links in the chat. We're going to put emails for you to follow up. As Carrie was just saying, don't hesitate to follow up and reach out to the admissions office with more specific questions and questions that you might have about your particular set of circumstances. I think we did a pretty good job. We got through a lot today. But if there's any final words of advice in the last 2 minutes that we have here that you would like to offer to our attendees today, and bonus points, if you can work in something about financial aid or financing a graduate degree, because that was another one of the questions that I didn't get to. But if you can work it into your last minute response, you get bonus points for me. So whoever would like to go first.
Sure, I'll go. Financial aid is huge. Our PhD students are fully funded. The master's students, for the most part, are not funded, but we do have the tuition incentive program, which matches external funds. Start now. Start looking on websites, Googling. If you put in, and I'll put in a link to it, NYU GSAS tip, we have search engines at the bottom where you can search for external awards. You never know what's out there. It does take a lot of time, but there are awards out there, so go try to find them. For the graduate school, you could, even if you get an award in your second year, you can apply and we'll match funds for it. If you get a bunch of small awards, we'll add them all up. So definitely, you need to take that into consideration. And remember that there's the Wasserman Center for Career Development to help you find on-campus jobs, which will not finance your degree, but at least will help it. And get your application in by the deadline. And start your letters of recommendation early, because it takes a while for them to respond. Sometimes either they do it right away, or you're going to have to remind them, and you don't want to have to remind them like 4 days after you ask them to do it the first time. And reach out to us. We're happy. I can't guarantee you that a department's going to answer, but my office will answer, and we'll try our best to get you a good answer.
And then I'll just quickly say, you know, one takeaway I would say from this is that if you're at the beginning of the process of doing, you know, the research for this, take the time to do the research. Look at different programs. You know, different programs might have various names. Do the work by going through those websites, reaching out to the admissions staff. You know, we popped our communications and our, you know, contact information into the chat. You know, if we didn't get to your questions today, send us an email with those questions. We're more than happy to answer them. And, you know, that helps you get yourself in a place where you're feeling confident and excited about the programs you're applying to. That would be the main takeaway, I would say, for students. In regards to scholarships and funding at the PhD level, we are also fully funded. At the master's level, students are not fully funded, but we do review students automatically for scholarship, whether you're domestic or international. They are based on academic merit, so your grades essentially. And so the higher that is, the more likely you are to get tuition scholarship. Just keep in mind that the tuition scholarship will never exceed 30% of the cost of tuition. So if you are looking for other ways to supplement, getting an on-campus job may be something to think about. Again, those are competitive, and or applying for outside scholarships, or if you're a US citizen and eligible for financial aid, applying for US federal financial aid is also something to consider.
Excellent. You both get brownie points, April brownie points from me. I don't know, there's no redeemable cash value there, but thank you very much to our panelists. A round of virtual applause to them. As they both said, their contact information, you can reach out to them, reach out to their offices for more information. My office, we do general information. So we help serve all of the graduate schools. So we do general tours of the Washington Square campus and the Brooklyn campus where Tandon is located. So you're also welcome to reach out to us if there's more general inquiries that you have or you'd like to visit campus. And that concludes our event. Thank you all so much for attending, and we appreciate you. Take care and good luck.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.